Hello, my name is Dallas Essary. This is my assistive augmented communication creation presentation. The device I chose today was a communication board. I have used this type of device before with students who have autism. Some of these students have been nonverbal, minimally verbal, or emergent communicators. The students I've worked with are repeat preschool aged children, 5 to 6 years old. The communication board that I use has real pictures with the words underneath. I use real pictures of items that the student will use in everyday activities. This board helps with transition, it helps making choices, and for the individual to communicate his or her needs. I also use a communication board for daily activities. This helps with transition. It helps establish a routine, and it also helps the individual know what they're doing and helps keep the individual on track. I use a first then card often. This card helps an individual start and finish a task. It also establishes a routine. It gives the individual a sense of choice by allowing him or her to choose an activity after completing a task. For a communication device to be successful, there needs to be consistency. For this, an individual needs to be able to use the system in different environments. A binder ring of pictures allows for the communication in different environments, and it can also be used to establish routine and transitions. I use the communication board for nonverbal or individuals who have limited communication as a means to communicate desires, needs, and wants. The picture ring binder also allows for accessibility for the individual to communicate in different settings and environments. Training takes time, and because every individual is different, techniques may vary. I will now demonstrate how to use the communication board. Hello, my name is Dallas Essary, and this is my demonstration for my communication board for my assistive augmentative creation project. An augmentative communication is a device dedicated to transmitting or producing messages or symbols in a manner that compensates for the impairment and disability of a recipient with severe expressive communication disorders and limitations. And the board that I'm going to be using today is for children who have autism. And autism is a developmental disorder of variable severity that is characterized by difficulty in social interaction and communication, and by restricted or repetitive patterns of thoughts and behavior. And this board is what I use for students who are nonverbal or have limited verbal capabilities. And over the past, I have worked with children who have been nonverbal, and most of them have been younger children, and I needed something that I could communicate very easily and that did not overwhelm them and did not have a whole lot of words. So I decided to use just pictures. And the pictures that I chose were actual pictures, the real pictures that I've taken and copied and laminated of items that they use in everyday activities. And this communication board here is the one we would use first thing in the morning as the children all gather in the classroom before we go to breakfast. I would have my students come up, the ones who are nonverbal, and they would choose what they want to eat for breakfast the first thing. And they get usually a choice, and these are real items that we would serve for breakfast. They would choose cereal, perhaps, milk, yogurt, have to have a fruit, so a banana, maybe a muffin. And this would allow the student not only to know that a transition is about to take place, but it also gives them a choice. They get to actually choose because they cannot tell me, so I use the pictures and they can tell me with the pictures of what they want. I realized over the course of a few years that giving the student or allowing the student to know that a transition is taking place is a very important communication to have with the student, because if they don't know where they're going or what's going on, that can start the day off even very bad. So allowing them to know that we are transitioning and we are going to eat breakfast is very important, and this allows them to not only choose but to know that we are going to breakfast when they make this choice. Lunch follows the same pattern. Before we go to lunch, they would make a choice on what they want. They have to have a fruit. They have to have a vegetable. That's just a requirement. They may choose pizza for lunch and juice. Now, as they get used to this, and you get used to seeing what they choose, it's usually the same things every day, because children with autism like routine, and they have sensory issues, many of them, so they'll usually choose a lot of the same items, and it becomes more predictable then. But this also allows for the transition and gives them a choice and lets them know what's going on. And for a break, I put this down here because yes, we do take breaks. We take a break after breakfast, before lunch, and throughout the day. But this here, one, it allows the teacher to communicate with the child that we are taking a break, we are leaving our activity, our in between activities, and we are going to the restroom, and we are getting a drink. But this can also be used for the student anytime during the day, can come and get one of these items and either show it to me or place it on there. I'd like for them to place it on there to keep in a routine, and then we carry out whatever the need is. And I do this because I want them to be consistent and get used to using the board for their communication, because consistency is the key. If I use it for one thing and do not use it for another, then we get out of the routine, and it can create, it doesn't make the board very successful. I also use this today, I feel. This is kind of important because it lets you know how they feel as they come to school that day. Usually we hope that today we feel happy and everything's pretty good. I know that sometimes on a Monday morning I kind of feel a little tired, and that lets the student express his emotions as how he feels right now. But maybe after lunch, when it's time for quiet time, they feel a little sad because they're tired and they're just wanting to go home. But at least this gives them a way to express how they feel. And I would use this throughout the day, because this is good information that anyone would need to know. Another thing that I think is very important that I want to let them know, any individual, especially with children who need routine and have trouble with transition, is when they're going home. Very important. They need to know they're going home. They're getting on the bus. We're leaving school, actually walking out. We're leaving our activities that they haven't enjoyed, playing all day with other children and their peers and any activity. And this becomes important This is a picture, or it says parent guardian, but what I would do would be take a picture of their parent or guardian and just put it up there, and when it's time to go home, I would move it, hand it to them, and they would move it over here so they know that we are transitioning from school to home. And how we leave the day can mean a big deal on how they come back tomorrow. And that could be the difference of them coming back happy or perhaps sad. But anyways, this communication board here I like because it allows them to know what's taking place, and it allows for the student to have a choice. Now this one here is used for children who are nonverbal, and seems to work fairly well. This here is our activity board, and I would have pictures of every student in the classroom, and how we would start the morning out is our listening center where we read. And I would put 3 pictures up, different ones every day, of 3 students that will choose what we are going to read for the day, some short stories. And this allows not only for us to start the activity, it allows for everyone to gather around and transition to the reading or listening center, and we know who's going to choose the book, so we don't have all kinds of different people grabbing and running for books. And this just has some order to it, I believe. And as we transition to perhaps math, this is where our centers get broken up a little. I may have 15 kids and split them into 3, and there's 3 that are at the math center. And if it's one of our children that are nonverbal or limited verbal, he or she may choose numbers. Well, if we use numbers for a while and we get quickly tired of numbers, which occasionally happens, we may go to counting blocks, and we will do that. And we'll have a timer set, and when the timer dings, everybody will transition to their other centers. Well, maybe it's writing center for our individual this time. We would move his or her picture to the writing center, and markers are chosen. Well, we work on markers maybe half the time. In our next activity, we choose Crayolas. This just keeps a sense of order. It lets everyone know where they're at and what they're doing and what they're working on and what they're working with. The same way with art. When the timer's up, we transition. It allows our students to know where they have transitioned to and when it was taking place. And right now we're cutting stuff out. Maybe we're done cutting stuff out, so now we're gluing stuff together. Or maybe that's what they've chosen to work on. There's a couple different things that we can choose, but any of these can be put up there, whatever we're working on for that day in the art center. The computer center, they would transition to the computer center when the time comes and move down. And usually we work with a Chromebook or iPad on various activities. That doesn't change a whole lot, but it's still a sense the students know where they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing as they move around and transition back and forth to their centers that they work on. One other thing that I use throughout the day for communication is my first then. And for younger students, I want to keep it still simple. I don't want a lot of words on there or choices, but if we're in the art center and today we're using paint, we're painting, they have to first finish that, then maybe we can choose a free center for a few minutes. They get that choice. Or if it's at the right time, I choose outside. Take a picture of our playground, the play equipment. And then this allows them, it teaches them to be diligent, to stay with the work, and that they have to finish a job, finish an activity and an assignment, and before we can move on to something else. This is very important. It helps with behavior also, that because it establishes, and if you use this every time, first then, I use it for every activity. That way they know what's expected. There's no surprises. And the routine and order and is very important. The last thing that I have that is very important, and this helps. I don't think any communication would be complete unless it's accessible and you can use it in various environments and take it anywhere. And I just carry a little binder, ring binder, and I have every picture that that a student may need or want, and I can put them on here. I can even carry two if I want them. And for here, if we need to go to the restroom, there's a restroom on there for this one. I even have, if we're outside and they want to play with the ball, they can show me the picture and I can go get the ball that they desire to play with. But this is very, very important that to be consistent, that we not only use this communication board in the classroom, we take it with us. We can use it for anything. It's relatively cheap. You can just take the pictures, laminate them, and hole punch it and put it on here, and then it's with us wherever we need to go, even if we're on a trip or something. And I think that is one of the keys to making this system work, is using it every time, everywhere, for every situation. Now, for communication, this is what I use the communication boards for, to communicate any desire or need or want that a student would have. This works well for student to teacher, teacher to student, or from peer to peer. And I think it works, and I think it's very effective. I've used it in the past, and I like communication. I like pictures to communicate with. Now, as a student becomes more familiar with it and better at it, you may want to use some extra words, and you may want to add extra labels. But for starting out, I want something simple. And how to and accessibility, as I mentioned before, it has to be accessible for you to use in different environments. And training was important. How do you train the student to use this? Well, I have a routine that I have used in the past that tends to work, and I choose something that the student desires, and most of the time outside works very well. It has in the past. So what I will do is have the student, I will show him the picture, and we will go outside. I'll hand it to him, he'll hand it back, we will go outside. We may stay for 2 or 3 minutes, and walk around. Then we come back in, and in 30 minutes, I take the picture and I show it to him again, and usually put it on like the break label, and we go back outside. And eventually, from my experience, they get to where they understand that when they hand you the picture, that means they get to go outside. And we'll do that for a week or two, and then eventually we transition it more and more into these other things. But this is what I have used, and it works very well. Just something that they really desire, and it will become, or it gets to a point where you have to kind of put this one up the outside, because they will go get it and want to go outside continually. But so you have to adapt to that, or get used to that also. Now, for teaching other professionals or the pairs in the room, it's the same way. We do it by demonstration and just showing them how important it is. But I think the main thing is to be consistent. We have to make sure that we do it every time, that not only the teacher does it, but the para does it. And then once we become consistent and get in a routine, it just becomes a normal part of communication. And I would like to say, as finishing up, that every individual is different. What works for one may or may not work for another. You have to be flexible, you have to adapt, and you may have to even change your communication board up from time to time as needs and desires change. But that's all part of the learning process and the communication process. But I hope that this has been beneficial, and I look forward to seeing other presentations. Thank you.